Old Mahmoud Khalil. Morning, boss. Come on, babies. Good morning. Yeah. Good morning, guys. All right, so we got this guy who's born in Syria, and he's a green card holder. He came over to the U.S. to go to school at Columbia University, and is focusing on his graduate degree. Now, as a green card holder that's in the U.S., who was before on a student visa, he's entitled to a lot of the rights that American citizens are allowed. He's not an American citizen. And that's a really important part, because this story is causing a lot of controversy over what one side would say is free speech and a violation of our Constitution from a fascist president, and the other side would say it's a national security issue. And so you kind of know where I'm going to land. I'm going to land on the national security side, but let me explain. So the issue is not that this guy's protesting. Now, the national media would have you think, especially the left-wing national media, will have you think that this is a violation of the Constitution and Trump advocated for free speech and he's going against his word. And again, he's a fascist. Well, herein lies the problem. One, Mahmoud can become a U.S. citizen, but he's not a U.S. citizen. And he can become a U.S. citizen and become naturalized within 3 years because he's married to an American citizen, or 5 years if he's not. Lock in horns. Behave, boys, behave. You got a baby right there, behave. Oh, they're just playing. They're getting their alpine goat on. Good job, guys. What the debate is whether or not he's authorized as a non-citizen, even as a citizen, if he's authorized to actually do what he's doing. Now, let's lay out a couple things that he's doing. One, it's not a First Amendment right because he's literally not just expressing an opinion. You could actually express opinions supporting Al-Qaeda, and that's a free speech protected right via the Constitution. It's not free speech when you incite violence. It's not actually free speech when you're supporting a foreign terrorist organization, which is Hamas. It was investigated by DHS. Was he providing material support to Hamas? Likely not. That's not likely the case. To provide material support, it's got to be money, weapons, the list goes on. It's material. So you might have heard of something called treason. Adhering to the enemy or adhere to enemies. Treason, 2381, 18 U.S. Supreme Court. It's a crime. You can't do that. But is it treasonous to advocate for a foreign terrorist organization? Maybe. Now here's where it gets a little murky, but the lines can be more clearly connected than treason or other things. Is distributing propaganda a way of providing material support for Hamas? You see, the connection in material support is the inciting of violence and also recruiting terrorists for the organization. And here's what's interesting to me about this Mahmoud guy. This is the same guy who advocates for the complete eradication of Western civilization. And now everybody's up in arms that he's been arrested, he's been detained, he's been sent to an ICE facility in Louisiana, and he may be deported. I say may, because certainly this is likely to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But they can make a clear argument about this exact circumstance, especially with the dissemination of pro-Hamas and Hamas propaganda. Okay, that incited violence, that committed destruction of property, that committed acts of violence against others. It's like this is an institution of higher learning, this Columbia University, that's now become an activation arm for political activists and not for actual education. That's certainly anti-Semitic. So is it a First Amendment issue? Well, let's let you hear from Marco Rubio, who I think is doing a great job as the Secretary of State, describe his authorities as a Secretary of State and, I don't know, concern with the national security of the United States and its interest. This is a good response. Let's roll it.
President Trump appealed to a lot of Americans during his campaign on free speech arguments and not suppressing speech, especially from the government. But your revocation of the green card, to many, is seen as one of the most anti-speech actions a secretary could take with his powers. How do you respond?
This is an important point, and I'm glad you asked this question. When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country, on a visitor's visa, okay? You are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would. If you actually end up doing that, once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa while you're here in those activities, we're going to kick you out.
What'd you guys think about that? I thought it was amazing. One thing I'll say is Marco Rubio tells it how it is. He's not blowing smoke up your butt. He's saying exactly his authority and what he's able to do, and he lays out the case. This dude is not an American citizen. It is not a right of any foreigner who comes into this country as a visa holder, as a green card holder, to do things that are grossly going to affect American policy abroad and, more significantly, national security. I mean, can you imagine a scenario where students were chanting for Al-Qaeda in the streets post 9/11? Can you imagine that? Now, again, it's not against the law to express your opinion, but it is against the law to disseminate and distribute whether material or information that is supporting a terrorist organization, which Hamas certainly is. All right, from another take, I want you to hear a former professor talk about her position and stance on what she thinks Columbia University's responsibility is. Let's roll that.
The university, I have to say, facilitated this abduction, having pursued disciplinary charges against him for over a year that were clearly baseless, and when we proved it to them that they were baseless, the charges were not dismissed, they put a target on his back, and they provided no protection for him over the last several days. The universities have two most sacred commitments and missions. One, to keep our students safe, and second...
Yeah, here's what's interesting about that. How about you just do your job and educate students? How about you just do that? And so Trump is cutting federal funding to a lot of these universities. Why? Because they're using their funds to breed political activists. And it's like, what's the drama? If this guy doesn't want to be in America because he states verbatim he wants to destroy Western civilization, dude, the amount of construction vehicles that drive by this road, oh my gosh. And she thinks that they should be protecting, the institution should be protecting these people by all cost. What? Okay, are you guys doing any education at all, especially with federal funding? The answer is no. Now, it likely would have been more beneficial if the FBI through the DOJ was charging these activists with providing material support. But guess what? Every single thing that I mentioned, material support, propaganda, even treason. Treason is like death by a firing squad. If you grow up in the military, you know that. You can't commit an act of treason. Well, if you're a student and you're federally charged, prosecuted, convicted, you're going to be sentenced to decades in prison. It happened post 9/11 with what we were dealing with AQ. Now we're in a situation where I don't think that process was followed, because there are legal protections under the law for even non-U.S. citizens who have their green cards. So I don't know where it's going to land. A federal judge has already blocked it, so they're not actually going to deport him right now, and likely the Supreme Court's going to take it up. If they can't deport him, which I think for Mahmoud is an easy solution, you don't like America, you want to say death to America and down with Western civilization, just go back to Syria where you came from. That's a real easy fix. Because if you have no interest in living here, like Rosie O'Donnell, she's apparently in Ireland now, then leave. Then leave. I would rather my taxpayer dollars go to the mass deportation voluntarily of people who want to get out of here. I would have the military use C-17s and put all these civilians through airborne school so we don't have to waste taxpayer dollars landing the aircraft. We just have to pay for the chutes, and do a mass tack and just dropping these people off in their foreign countries where they say death to America and down with Western civilization. Go back where you came from. We'll see how that works out. You hear the news in Syria? Not so good. Not so good. You're probably asking yourself, how much hay have you given these guys? Well, I have 3, 4, 5, 6 goats that I got to feed. If you're not a member of my Patreon, we do an underground episode. You can find the link down below. We'll be talking about North Korea, the tax and tariffs, and the Grand Supreme of Ontario. I know that's not what he's called. I'm just making fun of Canadians here. But the Grand Supreme of Ontario, it sounds like a Burger King special. The Grand Supreme of Ontario has backpedaled on his initial response, going hard in the paint, especially on liberal media, where he said he was going to induce a tax of 25% and potentially pull the electric plug. That would be very bad for Canada. I mean, if you don't know anything about this, I'll be talking about it more in the underground. I appreciate you guys, and I'm back to taking care of these goats. See you next time.